Good evening, church. Welcome to another Live at 5. Thanks for joining along with us tonight as we work our way through Psalm 50. So we're going to take a look just a little bit at Psalm 50 tonight. And I really want to focus on just two verses, but we'll get to those in just a minute. The question that I have for us before we dive into this psalm is a question that gets asked a lot here at Federated. And it's the question of, what is the condition of your heart? Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is, does your heart and the relationship that you have with Jesus match the way you're living your life? And that is a question that I believe the psalmist is addressing here in Psalm 50. It's a question that I think he's trying to get at by what he writes. And like I said, we want to focus on two verses, but before we get to those, I want to take a look at two reminders and a warning that the psalmist lays out for us. The first reminder comes to us in like the first 6 verses of the psalm. And what he lays out for us in verses 1 through 6 is that God will and does judge his people. That someday all peoples from all nations will have to stand before their Creator. And God will take those that don't know him or don't have a relationship with him on one side, and those that have entered into a covenant with him, he will take to glory. So that's the first reminder that we're given. The second reminder in this psalm comes in verses 7 through 13. And the psalmist writes in those verses a reminder of how God is self-sufficient. And he lays out for us, he says, God tells his people, I'm not complaining about the sacrifices you are offering me, but I want to remind you that I don't need them. He says, I don't need the bulls from your barns or the goats from your pens, for all the animals of the forest are mine. He says, I know every bird and I know every animal. All of creation I know by name. So we're reminded of the fact that while God required sacrifices of his people, that those sacrifices in no way could make God better, could add any value to God. And we'll kind of touch on that in a little bit again. So those are our first two reminders. The warning comes to us on the back end, starting in verse 16. And it's here that God addresses wicked people. It is here that God addresses those people. He says in verse 16, why bother reciting my decrees and pretending to obey my covenants? And then he goes on to talk about how you simply offer me lip service. Your words are hollow. You say that you have a relationship with me, but your heart's a million miles away. And if we want to bring that back home a little bit, I'm back to the question again. What is the condition of our hearts, right? Because I think we see it sometimes, and maybe some of us have gone there where we have reduced our relationship to Jesus to simply a checklist. Where as long as I fill in the box, or I cross off this, or I fill in that blank, then I've done what I need to do. You know, maybe we speak a good game, and on the outside, it looks like, yeah, we desire a relationship with Jesus. You know, we can speak all the right words, or we can, you know, post Christian things on social media, or we can make sure that we go to church on Sunday and youth group on Wednesday, and all the meanwhile this is going on and our hearts are a million miles away. And so he gives us this warning in the second half of the psalm, and he says, why bother with those things? Why bother with your checklist if your heart wants nothing to do with me? But I said I wanted to focus on two verses in the heart of what this psalmist tells us that God desires from us as believers. And there's 3 things. Verses 14 and 15. Make thankfulness your sacrifice to God, and keep the vows you made to the Most High. Then call on me when you are in trouble, and I will rescue you, and you will give me glory. The first thing that God desires of us is thankfulness. He desires that we live a life of gratitude. Church, when was the last time you paused to thank God for the things that you have? When was the last time you took a second to be thankful for everything that he has blessed you with in your life? The second thing that God desires of us is obedience. He says, and keep the vows you made to the Most High. God's love language is obedience. How do we as believers show God that we love him? It's by being obedient to him. It's by being obedient to what he calls us to do, what he tells us in his word. The third thing that God desires of us comes to us in verse 15. He says, then call on me when you are in trouble and I will rescue you. Dependence. God desires total dependence of us. He desires that we live a life of gratitude, that we are obedient to his commands, and that we are totally dependent upon him. And so, church, as we wrap this up, I want to end with the same question that we began with. What is the condition of your heart? Do you find yourself right now simply checking boxes or filling in blanks? Or do you truly desire that relationship with Jesus? The psalm ends in verse 23. It says, but giving thanks is a sacrifice that truly honors me. If you keep to my path, I will reveal to you the salvation of God. Check your heart. I know it's something that I've had to do. What is the condition of your heart? Thanks for joining in with us again tonight. Hope you have a great night. Thanks.